Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rahul. I work with UI Parthanon. Today, I'm not going to be talking about steel, but I'm going to be talking about cement, which is a significant building material, and specifically what is being done and what can be done to decarbonize cement and go towards green cement. So, I'll try to cover this in the next 5 to 10 minutes. We'll start with a brief of the Indian cement outlook. What are the emissions coming from cement? What is the importance of doing decarbonization early? What are the strategic levers for decarbonization? And what are the challenges and imperatives when it comes to greenification of cement? India is the second largest cement producer. We produce about 430 million tons of cement. We are at 290 per capita consumption, which is almost half of the global consumption. So there's a big growth story ahead of us. Now, while all this is good, what happens is that cement is a very highly polluting industry. So the Indian cement industry per se is efficiency-wise probably the best in the world. So if you see the graph on the extreme right-hand side, the carbon emission intensity for the Indian cement is roughly 550 kgs per ton of cement, which compares to about 630 globally. But because of the scale of production, we end up becoming the second largest emissions producer in the cement sector. And we account for almost 11% of the global emissions coming out of cement. Now, this is where the newly launched carbon credit trading scheme or the CCTS becomes very important. We have seen that from PAT to CCTS, the regulatory backdrop is shifting quite rapidly. Now, the first compliance window for the CCTS scheme is 2025 to 27, under which the reduction targets are relatively modest. So for cement, it is 2 to 6% over the next 2-year period, which translates into an abatement of close to 9 million tons of carbon dioxide. However, the CCTS regulations are expected to become more and more stringent going forward because we are currently way below the SBTi as well as the net zero targets. So we expect these compliance requirements to shoot up over the next 5 to 10 year period. Now, why is it important for companies to do decarbonization? Now, we did a simulation for a 10 million ton cement company, and we saw that if the cement company were to do business as usual, does not take any decarbonization efforts, what is the kind of financial impact that the company can incur over the next 4-year period? Now, I just want you to focus on two lines. The blue line is the carbon emissions by this company as BAU, and the black line is the one that the company will have to adhere to if it has to comply with the CCTS standards. Now, if the decarbonization initiatives are not undertaken, this company will have to pay a financial penalty of almost 300 to 350 crores over the next 4 to 5 year period. That sort of underpins the importance of early decarbonization by the cement sector. Now, what we expect is that if the industry were to start taking these efforts, there are gains that the companies will get over a long-term period. Because while the cost of decarbonization is expected to go down as learnings come, as technological improvements come into the play, the carbon pricing is expected to keep on going up. So if the companies do decarbonization in a capex today, they will stand to gain in the long term. Luckily, we have seen that the Indian cement companies have taken pretty aggressive targets. In fact, they are surpassing the global targets that global companies have taken. So while the Indian companies have taken targets of around 450 kgs per ton of cement produced, the global companies, and these are major global companies, they are in the range of 500 to 600 tons. So it's a good start by the Indian cement companies. Now, there are 4 or 5 major strategic levers that companies have at their disposal to reduce carbon emissions. One is thermal efficiency, which is basically around power and fuel, which comes from process control, hardware updates, alternative fuels. Then the next is the product modification, where the efforts are to reduce the clinker content in cement because that's where most of the emissions are happening. Preservation, which is going to be the most important area, estimated to contribute to almost 25% of the net zero targets, and this is where a lot of efforts are going to be required by the government as well as the industry. And the last is carbon efficiency. So as the industry moves towards more RMC, it basically brings into play better controls, lower cement usage, so on and so forth. Now let's look at these quickly. The first lever is thermal efficiency improvement. Now, as I said earlier, there are limited gains which will come from improvement of the plants, because plants are fairly modern in the country. The second intervention we have seen happening in the Western countries, which we feel are resulting good returns, are AI/ML interventions through establishment of digital twins. Now, these we have seen Lafarge Holcim do it in Switzerland, and they are going to roll it out into 140 plants through one of their programs. We have seen Siemens doing it. EY has developed this at a few steel and building material plants, and we have seen a good 10 to 15% reduction in energy cost using these digital twins, which basically optimize your raw materials, fuel mix, process controls, and dynamically adjust all these inputs so as to improve your power and fuel requirements. The third is thermal substitution, where basically the companies are trying to substitute coal and coke with alternative fuels. Now, this is a problem area as far as India is concerned, because if you look at the thermal substitution rate, we are at around 5%, whereas the global average is 15%. And there are some Scandinavian countries where you have seen even 80-85% thermal substitution. Now, the main reason here is that we don't have supply chains for consistent availability of good quality alternative fuels. Now, the role of urban municipal bodies is important here in source segregation of municipal solid waste, which can be very good alternative fuel. The other areas of problem are the unavailability and a very high cost of green hydrocarbon, which is 2 to 3 times more expensive as compared to grey hydrocarbon. There are certain interesting technological developments which are happening in the kiln side, which is where almost 70% of the emissions happen in the cement sector. But these are at either a pilot stage or an early rollout stage, and we don't expect a significant commercial scale usage, at least for the next 5 to 10 years period. The next big lever is decarbonization of electricity, where again a lot of Indian companies are taking aggressive steps in terms of establishing waste heat recovery plants, setting up green power plants. In fact, in green power, you see companies like Ultratech, Ambuja, Dalmia, they have taken the target of going nearly 100% of their requirements through green power. So a lot of work happening here in decarbonization of electricity. Interesting developments are also happening in terms of changing your product mix. So there are 5 or 6 major products which are being developed where the clinker content in cement is being reduced, and clinker content is directly linked to your emissions. For example, an OPC cement will have 800 kgs per ton of cement, whereas a PPC cement will have probably 450 kgs. So the moment you reduce clinker, the emissions are going to go down. Now, one of the things that the government can do here is that we don't have a definition of green cement. There is no taxonomy for green cement, and that's something that we believe that the government should take steps and establish a standard for green cement. The government can also create demand pull through mandatory public procurement of green cement, green rating incentives for using green cements, and perhaps even providing carbon credit multipliers or preferential taxes for companies who are doing or using green cements. A very, very important lever for net zero is going to be CCUS. CCUS is basically you capture cement, you capture carbon dioxide, store it, transport it, and basically use it into other value-added products like chemicals like urea or building materials like carbonated concrete, etc. Now, 2 major issues here. One is very high cost and a near lack of supply chains for transport and storage of CO2. Now, again, the regulatory and policy efforts are required here from the government side in terms of fiscal incentives and subsidies for pilot and full-scale CCUS projects. Then development of carbon capture hubs and shared infrastructure. Now, towards this, the recent initiative by the Department of Science and Technology, where 5 test beds have been set up as an industry academia project, is a start. And thirdly, a clear policy and regulatory framework for a long-term CO2 storage facility. These are some of the initiatives that the government needs to take in order to get higher adoption of CCUS, because this is going to be a very, very key factor for abatement in the country. So net, there are 4 major challenges: economic constraints related to high costs of CCUS, regulatory barriers, because there is no there is no clear definition of green cement, and there is no demand for green cement because there is no green cement standard. Technology constraints, because we don't see any immediate improvement in kiln technology, but there are certain other AI/ML technologies which need to be adopted, which are slowly being adopted in the West. And largely supply chain constraints, where CCUS is hampered because of lack of CO2 storage and transport, and alternative fuels, simply because the supply chains are not there in place. The thermal substitution rates are not good. So these are the 4 major issues that we find as far as abatement of carbon dioxide emissions is concerned in cement. Now, net, summary slide, we need support from the government side. There have been initiatives that the government has taken in terms of national hydrogen mission, green hydrogen and green ammonia missions, so on and so forth. Even the industry has taken a number of steps towards green cement. However, the future imperatives from the government side are establishing green cement definition to streamline the roadmap and facilitating green finances, demand creation for green cement through policies around government procurement, establish a framework for setting up supply chains for alternative fuels, promotion of hydrogen adoption by making it affordable, development of a national strategy for CO2 storage, and development of a regulatory framework to govern the CCUS activities for driving the adoption, and finally fiscal incentives such as carbon taxes, carbon pricing, etc., which will incentivize people to start using green cement and companies to start producing green cement. Thank you.